This program contains graphic violence and sexual situations. Viewer discretion is advised.
Oh my God!
A Beverly Hills mansion is the site of a gruesome discovery. The buckshot-riddled bodies of a Hollywood media mogul and his wife.
Jose Menendez had kind of a sketchy reputation.
At first, it appears to be a mob hit. But the real truth shocks investigators and ignites an international media firestorm.
These were a pair of very troubled parents. They raised a couple of very troubled kids.
You sicken me.
And the family narrative ended in horrible tragedy.
For this bloodbath was the work of the couple's own children. A bloodbath foretold in a screenplay written by one of the sons.
You just have to read the screenplay to know what Eric's fantasy was.
When the story broke that he and his wife had been massacred in their Beverly Hills home, it was huge.
Greedy rich kids kill Ozzie and Harriet on a Sunday night in Beverly Hills.
It's gonna be really messy.
I mean, how awful is that, to know that your children, the people you gave birth to, are murdering you?
Nobody knew what their defense could possibly be.
The testimony of Eric and Lyle Menendez was some of the most dramatic moments I've ever seen in a courtroom.
I just fired until there was nothing left.
Meet Lyle and Eric Menendez, two privileged brothers destined to inherit an empire, until murder made them famous. It's the crime that brought an end to the decadent 1980s.
It was just full of elements that attracted the media: Hollywood, murder, Beverly Hills.
And for the first time in history, a real-life soap opera played out 24 hours a day on cable TV.
Eric and Lyle were two of the biggest celebrities in America in 1993 because everybody was hanging on their every word.
People crowded around the door trying to get a front row seat to see Lyle and Eric Menendez.
It was just too much for the media to turn away from.
They were the seemingly perfect family, living a seemingly perfect life, whose children almost committed the perfect murder. And America was consumed with one question: what could possibly motivate these two brothers to commit an unthinkable human slaughter?
The Menendez family was the personification of the American dream.
Jose's family came from Cuba to get a better life.
While attending Southern Illinois University, Jose Menendez meets Mary Louise Kitty Anderson.
Kitty Menendez was a small-town girl from Illinois who'd been a beauty queen.
He married Kitty. They had two children, Lyle and Eric. They were living the dream that we all want to have. And Jose worked very, very hard to get to the top.
Jose Menendez was a dynamic businessman who went from becoming an accountant at one of the big 8 accounting firms to becoming head of Hertz Rent-A-Car.
Jose Menendez was tough. He knew what he wanted out of his employees, and he would do anything to get what he wanted.
I'm not interested in your excuses, Dennis. You let the team down.
In the world of Jose Menendez, everything had to be perfect. And that was how he ran major corporations, and that was how he ran his family.
He wanted his sons to achieve beyond what he had done. They were to be perfect. And so anything that he got in his mind he wanted them to do, they had to do to the ultimate.
He was really rough on the boys. And because of that, they grew very close together because it was them against their dad.
Lyle Menendez was the older of the two.
He was not a great student, but his father wanted him to carry on the Menendez name. His father wanted him to be his successor.
Eric Menendez was the shyer, quieter, more emotional of the two.
Jose demands nothing short of success in both academics and athletics.
Jose Menendez was a very tough father in terms of developing his sons as nationally ranked tennis players. He used to wake them up at 4 in the morning and get them out on the tennis court, and they would hit balls for 3 hours before going to school.
These boys were under their father's thumb to such an extent that they almost had no life of their own.
Their father's quest for perfection is obsessive, and their mother, Kitty, only adds fuel to the fire.
Kitty Menendez was a very troubled woman who was an alcoholic. She was addicted to prescription pills.
The relationship between Jose and Kitty was not very amiable. Jose was having an affair, which really upset Kitty's life. She knew about it.
She was just the doormat, and she did whatever her husband said, and in spite of that, he was cheating on her. It was extremely dysfunctional.
It seems as though no one can live up to Jose's expectations. So when Lyle's hair starts thinning, Jose forces him to wear a toupee.
Jose felt very definite that he did not want people to see Lyle as losing his hair.
Jose and Kitty Menendez believed that you fake it till you make it. They wanted to make sure that their public persona was that they had these two amazing boys who could do anything they put their mind to it.
I don't get it. The quadratic formula did X equals...
The problem was that Lyle and Eric didn't put their mind to anything except for maybe driving sports cars and hanging out with pretty girls. So the only way that Jose and Kitty could deal with their son's failures was to cover it up.
Get up.
They would do the kids' homework for them. They would buy their way out of trouble.
Meanwhile, Jose is coming into his own as a Hollywood player. In 1986, he becomes CEO of Live Entertainment, the independent movie studio responsible for the Rambo films. The Menendez family moves from New Jersey to the glamour of Beverly Hills, California.
Beverly Hills was considered to be one of the ritziest neighborhoods in the United States.
Their house had even been previously lived in by Elton John, Prince, and Michael Jackson.
And they were living there, and they were living the life. And people in this country have a view of California and Beverly Hills, which has been created by the media. You know, they was that TV show, Beverly Hills 90210. So, like, what could be better?
Their aspirations are set as high as the stars they live amongst. But 18-year-old Lyle stays behind in New Jersey so he can begin his freshman year at Princeton.
Lyle Menendez was a highly ranked tennis player, and so that helped him get into a school where he really didn't belong and didn't have the academic background to survive.
Jose took care of many things, helping Lyle get through the portion of college that he got through. You might say there was a lot of cheating done, because there was.
But it isn't long before Lyle is caught.
Lyle Menendez was on the verge of being thrown out of Princeton, which was a huge slight for the family.
Mr. Menendez, this institution has standards that must be upheld.
Look, Lyle really is a bright boy.
Well, I'm sure that he is, however.
It's just that, well, he's a little distracted right now. But I'm taking care of that.
Meanwhile, back in Beverly Hills, Eric has begun writing a screenplay with a friend that will eerily echo reality.
Eric had a friend named Craig, and the two of them played tennis together. They got together and wrote this screenplay called Friends. It was all about a kid who killed his parents to inherit $157 million.
I just don't think you can kill him off in Act 2. You gotta maintain suspense, at least for another act.
Okay, well then when can we get to the break-in?
You just have to read the screenplay to know what Eric's fantasy was.
When Lyle comes home for summer vacation, he finds an easy money source when he and Eric begin robbing houses. They steal over $100,000 in cash and jewelry before they are caught.
And just like it always happened before, they didn't face the music for it. They didn't go to jail for that.
Jose Menendez was a deal maker. He stepped right in and made a deal with the DA's office, paid off the families who were victimized in the robberies, and cleaned everything up.
They would do whatever they had to do to make sure that their family looked perfect from the outside and that no one knew how bitterly disappointed they were in Lyle and Eric.
But the boys know there are consequences waiting for them.
You sicken me, both of you. Do you realize how much money you're costing me? Not to mention ruining my good name. I need to think.
Now, Lyle was involved in this, but Jose wanted to protect Lyle's reputation.
Eric, lucky for you, you're still a minor. You're gonna take the fall for your pathetic older brother. You did this alone.
So ultimately, Eric took responsibility for the robbery.
And I swear to God, Lyle, you're gonna owe me for this. For the rest of your life. You understand me?
Jose Menendez was a dictator, kind of like a Castro. And he ruled the roost with tyranny, not with love and affection, with tyranny.
So ultimately, they came to a point where they really feared their father.
So Lyle and Eric come up with a plan to finally gain their independence.
They managed to buy some shotguns and had devised this plan to kill their parents.
So why shotguns? Jesus, I already told you this. It's the quickest way. We have to make sure that they're dead.
Lyle was a little dim, and I think on his own, Lyle wouldn't have done it. I think Eric was the mastermind.
Eric Menendez was the brother who co-wrote a screenplay about killing your parents and inheriting $157 million. And I believe Eric Menendez was actually the shrewder and the more intelligent of the two brothers.
I don't think you're an idiot.
Then why are you treating me like one?
I'm not treating you like an idiot. I'm trying to stay out of prison, and I don't know what you're doing.
However the decision was reached between the two brothers, it would become a reality on August 20th, 1989.
On the day of the murders, the Menendez brothers were living a life that teens across the country would love to have. There was tennis, there was watching TV, there was going shopping at an upscale mall, and then they were going out to the movies.
Eric and Lyle Menendez left the house at about 8 o'clock, told their parents that they were going to see a movie nearby. And they never went to the movie. They had 2 shotguns in the back of Eric's car, and they loaded those shotguns.
Jose and Kitty have fallen asleep watching television.
And they snuck in, and they began firing the shotguns at their parents.
The brothers shower and change in the guest house, dump their guns and clothes, then return and dial 911.
Yes, please. What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? Someone killed my parents. Pardon me? Someone killed my parents. What? Who? Are they still there? Yes. The people... No.
Eric and Lyle Menendez made a frantic call to 911 in which Lyle Menendez wept and sobbed and said that his mom and dad had been killed.
Eric, who had taken acting at Beverly Hills High School, was in the background screaming and yelling, rather like an animal.
Who is the person that was shot? My mom and my dad. Your mom and dad? My mom and my dad. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're on our way over there with the ambulance. Okay, I gotta go.
Beverly Hills police responded immediately after Lyle's 911 call.
The brothers are out on the sidewalk and they're sort of beating their chest and rending their clothes as if it were some sort of really cheap Hollywood production.
When detectives enter the mansion, they are confronted with a horrifying scene. 45-year-old Jose Menendez is soaked in blood and slumped over on the sofa.
And the wounds are grisly and they're gruesome. One of the wounds is so big that a man's fist could fit inside of it.
47-year-old Kitty has been shot so many times that she is unrecognizable.
They blew up their mother. I mean, what they did to her was, it was shocking. They shot both parents near the knees, and my theory was always that that was done to look like a kneecapping, which would help with the organized crime excuse.
Lyle and Eric are outwardly distraught and inconsolable to the point where detectives break protocol.
The detectives treated them like grieving children rather than suspects. Beverly Hills PD handles 1 murder a year, okay? LAPD handles dozens of murders a week. If LAPD had shown up, it would have been a far different thing.
An interesting fact is that the police did test the hands of Jose and Kitty Menendez for gunpowder residue, and they found none. And they did not test Eric and Lyle Menendez because they thought they were so emotional and they wanted to be sensitive. And if they had, they would have caught the brothers that night.
Instead, detectives bring the brothers to the Beverly Hills Police Department for questioning.
The sons told the police that they suspected their father's business had something to do with the death of their parents, and that it was probably some sort of organized crime hit.
But just 20 minutes into the interview, Eric breaks down.
There was a lot of, they're there, son, we want you to feel better. We're gonna be friends. We're gonna help you get over this.
So rather than letting Eric collect himself and then continuing with the questioning, the cops let them go home, which allowed them to figure out their story a little bit more.
Meanwhile, news of murder in Beverly Hills travels fast.
When the story broke that Jose Menendez and his wife had been massacred in their Beverly Hills home, it was huge. It was probably the biggest thing in Beverly Hills since Sharon Tate was killed.
Most of the media reports suggested that it might have been a mob hit or something related to the entertainment business.
Lyle and Eric Menendez were unknown people when this story broke. No one knew they existed. But Jose Menendez was very well known in the entertainment industry.
I mean, he was a true cornerstone of this company, which I love.
People wondered what had happened, and the police weren't saying much. It was a true murder mystery.
Days after the murders, a memorial and funeral services are held.
And Lyle wore his father's shoes to the funeral. The thing about him wearing the father's shoes was symbolic of the fact that his father had always wanted him to be the next Jose Menendez.
We never wanted for anything. They were the most loving and giving parents any child could ever ask for. I respected my father, and I adored my mother.
Lyle speaks for 30 long minutes on his admiration for his parents. Eric, however, remains silent.
It's interesting that Eric decided not to speak because he was the one with the acting background. For whatever reason, he decided not to.
But Eric and Lyle's apparent grief is short-lived.
Eric and Lyle Menendez, within a few weeks, received an insurance payout, and they went on a spending spree.
This is a Porsche Carrera Speedster, only 800 of these made.
You have to remember that they were young men. They were really boys who were now free to spend all this money however they wanted to spend it.
It's perfect.
You want to go for a drive?
I'll just take it.
That's a deal.
Lyle bought a Porsche. Eric bought a new Jeep. They both bought Rolexes.
They were buying so many toys and so many things that suddenly police and everybody else were saying, this isn't how we would expect two newly made orphans to act. They didn't know how to act like they were grieving.
The investigation into the grisly crime heats up, and investigators are taking note of Lyle and Eric's lavish spending habits.
Lyle in particular started spending money like crazy, and it was not good.
Within several months, we knew they had done it, and it was not an organized crime hit.
The police were focused on Eric and Lyle Menendez as the primary suspects in the murder of their parents.
Reporter Robert Rand is asked to write a story about the life of Jose Menendez for the Miami Herald.
As part of my research for the Miami Herald, I came to Los Angeles in early October of 1989, and I spent several days talking to the brothers.
I've never seen anything like it. Never will see anything like it. Probably the hardest thing I'll probably ever have to. They weren't real. They didn't look real. They wax. They look like wax. It's something that I've never seen my dad helpless.
Eric and Lyle Menendez were displaying very genuine emotion. We're talking very lovingly and caringly about their parents.
You know, I think that possibly if Lyle and I would have been home, if we would have been able to do something about it, maybe my dad would be alive. I definitely would give my life for my dad's.
There was no suspicion of them publicly at the time I met with them, and there was absolutely no reason for me to be suspicious that he was not being genuine with me.
But on October 31st, 1989, Eric has a sudden change of heart.
After the murders, Eric seemed to have suffered the most in terms of hysteria, the sleeplessness, the other things that indicated he was very traumatized by killing his parents. I mean, boo-hoo.
Roughly 10 days after I spent this day talking with Eric Menendez about his family, Eric Menendez called Dr. Jerome Oziel and said that he needed to come talk to him about something.
Dr. Jerome Oziel, a therapist previously used by the Menendez family, is stunned by what Eric tells him.
Maybe it was just too big of a secret for Eric to keep, and he had to tell someone. So he went and told his therapist that, yes, I killed my parents. Lyle and I did it together.
I didn't think we'd ever actually go through with it. Dad was gonna cut off the inheritance, and we saw this TV show.
What TV show?
It's the Billionaire Boys Club.
The Billionaire Boys Club is a 1987 film chronicling the true story of a murder set amidst a social club for sons of wealthy families.
So his therapist says to him, bring Lyle here. We need to talk to Lyle too.
And that was the beginning of the end.
You stupid idiot!
Lyle.
Dad was right about you. You're weak. Right down to your core.
Lyle, I'm bound by doctor-patient confidentiality.
And you! If you say anything to anyone about this, I swear to God, you'll be next. Lyle, shut up!
Lyle, I'm your therapist. I'm here to help you. I'm on your side. Please, sit down. Hey, let's talk about our options here.
Lyle and Eric were seeing a therapist. I was also seeing that therapist.
Judalon Smith is dating Dr. Oziel, and he breaks doctor-patient confidentiality by confiding in her his secret.
The only reason I'm telling you this is I'm in fear for my life. They threatened to kill me.
Who threatened to kill you?
The Menendez brothers. They did it, Jude. They confessed to the murders, told me everything.
Oh my God.
If something should happen to me, someone has to know.
Oziel decides to try to get the confession on audio tape in case it's ever needed.
Dr. Oziel told the brothers that perhaps they should record an audio tape that would show that they had remorse just in case they ever were arrested. And it was at this time that he invited his girlfriend, Judalon Smith, to sit in the waiting room just in case anything crazy took place or the brothers started making threats.
That was how I ended up there and how I overheard parts of the conversation.
Once we started, nothing could stop us. We couldn't change the plan because it was formed perfectly. So we just went ahead and did it. That's it.
The Menendez brothers openly confess under what they assume is the protection of doctor-patient confidentiality, but they are unaware that someone else is listening.
I did overhear them say that they killed their parents.
Eventually, it had to happen. It was basically ruining my life and Lyle's. Almost had no choice to do what I did. And I hate myself for doing it.
From the moment that I heard the confession, I wanted to go to the police. But I was scared. They killed their parents, so who am I to them? I mean, if you'll kill your parents, who won't you kill?
But Dr. Oziel isn't the only person the Menendez brothers confessed to. 3 months after the murders, Eric's friend Craig tells authorities that Eric admitted he killed his parents, just like in the screenplay the two wrote together. Officers ask Craig to wear a wire and attempt to get the confession again.
So tell me again how this all went down.
But this time, Eric denies it.
I just made it up, man. It didn't happen.
What does Eric say? I was joking. That wasn't how it happened.
We knew they had done it beyond all possible doubt, but we couldn't prove it.
Meanwhile, the boys' lavish spending continues.
They spent $1 million in months on anything that they wanted to buy. At that rate, they were going to go through the money in a year.
The investigation went on for a long time. It went on for probably a year.
I just got to that point where I felt like, you know, I'd rather be dead. I mean, it took me a long time to do the right thing, but ultimately I did the right thing.
So Judalon Smith goes to the cops and blows the case wide open.
It's all on tape, right in Jerry's safe.
The Beverly Hills police got a search warrant and seized the audio tapes. Jerry Oziel was freaked out when the police came back to his house with the audio tapes. He was jumping up and down and saying, "I'm in danger, my wife's in danger, Judalon Smith is in danger, you need to listen to these tapes right now." And so the Beverly Hills police, they listened to the audio tapes and they heard the confession of Eric and Lyle Menendez to murdering their parents.
When Eric and Eric took courage, you have to believe, you have to think. And if the only way I was going to make a decision to kill my mother without Harry's consent, I didn't even want to influence him in that issue. I just let him sleep on it in a couple days.
We knew that the brothers had killed their parents. It was time to arrest everyone.
Stop, police! Lyle Menendez, you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Later that afternoon, Lyle Menendez was arrested coming out of his house with two friends from Princeton.
You're going to jail, buddy.
Meanwhile, Eric was in a tennis tournament in Israel when Lyle was arrested. And when he heard that Lyle had been arrested, it took him 3 days to come home to turn himself in.
When finally it came out that they were charging Eric and Lyle, it was an enormous story, just enormous. I mean, two rich boys who had everything.
The combination in Beverly Hills, murder, the movie business, a beauty queen wife, a show business father, executive. It was just too much for the media to turn away from. It became a firestorm of national coverage.
There were oddities about it. I mean, just the fact that it was on Elm Drive, which had been the name of a horror movie, and the fact that in Beverly Hills, people don't get killed.
Everybody knew who they were. Everybody wanted interviews with them.
It's gotten to the point where some people will do just about anything to get into Judge Weisberg's courtroom to see and hear the Menendez boys.
I was really surprised at kind of the groupies that have been here for a while. You have to keep remembering that these aren't actors pretending to be the Menendez brothers. They're actually them.
I think they're really cute. I think Eric Menendez and his brother are very nice looking.
For young kids like this, that was exciting. They were in Hollywood now. They were stars.
Eric and Lyle make their first courtroom appearance, but it is clear they are not taking their charges seriously.
These kids had never had any consequences for their actions because whenever they did anything wrong, their dad was there to fix it. The irony of this whole thing is that the person who had gotten them out of all these scrapes was Jose, and they had shot him in his living room in the back of his head.
Although the brothers no longer have their father to bail them out, they do still have his money.
They immediately got representation, and the representation they got was incredible. They got Leslie Abramson.
Leslie Abramson was just a masterful attorney, and watching her in court was like watching great theater. And their lawyers were fighting like mad to keep this audio tape confession they had made with their therapist out of evidence.
The defense claims admitting the tape violates doctor-patient confidentiality, and it takes 2 years for a judge to make a final ruling.
The stakes couldn't have been higher. If they used these tapes, the boys would be convicted. If they didn't use these tapes, there wasn't even enough evidence to try them.
And then suddenly, boom, the announcement is made.
You say anything,
to anyone about this, I swear to God, you'll be next.
Lyle, shut up!
California Supreme Court ruled that once there was a threat, the therapist-patient privilege no longer applied.
When the audio tape confession of the brothers to Dr. Jerome O'Seal was admitted as evidence, the defense had to completely change their position.
It takes another year before the brothers finally have their day in court, and the defense team rebrands the image of the Menendez brothers as the Menendez boys. It was lining up to be the trial of the century.
Everybody got ready for the trial, and a lot of famous reporters came for it.
People crowded around the door trying to get a front row seat to see Lyle and Eric Menendez.
By the time this jury was able to see the boys, things had been pretty well orchestrated on their behavior, on their appearance.
She had them wear crew neck sweaters and Ivy League shirts, and she was always hugging them and touching them so that you knew that they weren't these horrible people that no one would want to go near.
They're in their mid-20s, but somehow Leslie Abramson has turned everybody into thinking that these are two kids.
It wasn't like going into a trial where you were trying to find out if somebody had really committed a crime. It was known from the very beginning, of course, that the boys had killed their parents. And it just became a question of why.
Nobody knew what their defense could possibly be. So Leslie did her opening statement, and it was a bombshell. Absolute bombshell.
What Leslie Abramson presents sends shockwaves through America.
She said that these boys had been sexually and mentally abused by their father.
You heard about some of the things that he liked to do to his little boy. And one of them was to stick tacks like this in his thighs and in his butt.
With the help of their lawyer, Leslie Abramson, they turned themselves from being these spoiled rich kids into victims.
And the defense was dubbed the abuse excuse.
How do you say somebody wasn't abused? It's hard to do.
My dad had been molesting me.
And did you want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I just wanted to stop.
Were you seeking help from your brother?
Yes. He would guide me in all my movements, and I would have oral sex with him. He would rape me.
When Lyle testified and he cried a great deal, the courtroom was just, you could have heard a pin drop. Everybody was holding their breath. It was so appalling.
I just told him, I don't. I just told him that I didn't want to do this, and that it hurt me. And he said that he didn't mean to hurt me, and he loved me.
The testimony of Eric and Lyle Menendez in the first trial was some of the most dramatic moments I've ever seen in a courtroom.
It was kind of America's little dark secret, was that sexual abuse went on in families, and not only lower class families, but the rich and famous.
When they testified to it, it was compelling because most people don't listen to that kind of stuff every day.
Eric and Lyle Menendez testified that they had been sexually molested by their parents. They testified that their mother knew what was going on.
Did you think your mother would stop him?
Oh, I thought my mom would do it with him. There wasn't no one and the other. She would say that I was the problem in her life and that Lyle and I had ruined her life, and she wanted to do other things, but then she had children and it just destroyed what she wanted to do in her life.
Get your little ass in that closet. Don't come
There are typically no witnesses to sexual molestation in a family, but there were hundreds of witnesses that saw emotional and physical abuse of the brothers.
But District Attorney Pamela Bozanich is quick to point out the obvious holes in their story.
I can tell you right now that I am 100% sure that they fabricated the defense. I'm not 90% sure, I'm 100% sure. I contacted the jail. I said, I want to know how many hours a day the Menendez brothers are spending with their lawyers. And I was told it was like 4 to 5 hours a day. I would think anybody, even a bad actor, would be able to do that, especially if your acting is to save your life.
So the actual legal defense, which people are confused about, was that the brothers claimed that they were in fear for their lives, that their parents were going to kill them.
The brothers claim they were marked for death for threatening to expose their parents' abuse.
I told him that I would tell everybody I would tell everybody everything about him. I would tell the police, and that I would tell the family.
What did you think was going to happen?
I thought we were in danger. I thought he felt he had no choice.
But to what?
That he would kill us.
Mom and Dad were sitting in the den, watching television, eating ice cream with blueberries at the time of their demise. They were not threatening anybody.
But will a jury be convinced that this is all self-defense?
I was giving him ammunition, and we were just loading as fast as possible. There was light coming in from the hallway, from the TV. We just burst through the doors, and I started firing. And I remember firing directly at him. When I walked in the room, I was panicking.
What are you doing?
And I just fired every shot I had. I didn't stop to take a look at what I was doing after each shot. I just fired until there was nothing left.
I'm out of ammo. Me too. What do we do? Yeah. I've got more in the garage. Come on. Let's go.
Despite being shot up to 8 times, Kitty Menendez is still alive.
You reloaded? Is that yes?
Yes. I heard a noise coming from my mom. I guess I would characterize it as a moaning simply because she was dying.
Hey. Shoot him in the kneecap. It looked like a mob hit.
I mean, how awful is that, to know that your children, the people you gave birth to, are murdering you?
With the brothers on the witness stand, District Attorney Pamela Bozanich goes on the attack.
This is not a hard case at all. This is what happened. These two people were sitting there watching television, and they got slaughtered by their sons.
What Eric was testifying to was not a lie. His family really was this sick. It really was a dreadful and strange place to grow up.
And for all of those children who were severely abused, for all those children whose parents put them in the hospital in truly life-threatening situations, this defense is an offense. Keep in mind, this is the best defense Daddy's money could buy.
You almost got away with it, didn't you?
Yeah, you characterize it that way.
I mean, I remember them talking about they picked up all the shell casings. Why did you pick up the shell casings? For fingerprints. Well, heck, obviously you premeditated.
America was torn, whether they believed Lyle and Eric or not. And as it turns out, the jury was torn as well.
Once you tell the story, and it winds up being a horror story, you have a better chance of getting an acquittal.
Something that these boys said must have convinced some of the jurors, because there were 2 hung juries at the end of the trial, and a mistrial was called.
Since our last report to you, we have been unable to move closer to agreement on any of the counts.
Judge Weisberg was embarrassed by the lack of verdicts in the first Menendez trial. The public was outraged. People were screaming on talk radio, how could these jurors not convict the brothers? The brothers admitted that they killed their parents. How could they not convict them?
So they go to trial again, and all the distractions have been removed. There's no cameras in the courtroom. There's no big media press.
In the second trial, Judge Weisberg changed a lot of major evidence rulings and did not allow the family history to come in during the guilt phase of the trial.
In the second trial, Lyle did not testify. Okay? Well, how do you put up your abuse excuse if you can't testify?
It was not nearly as colorful. It was not nearly as much of a soap opera. It was much drier, and it wasn't nearly as exciting as Menendez won.
The jury in the second trial was given first-degree murder or not guilty. Well, they said they did it. Okay? So it's first-degree murder.
Without those distractions, the jury is able to convict them quickly, both of them, of murder.
On July 2nd, 1996, Lyle and Eric Menendez are each sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms with no possibility of parole.
And so it had the right ending.
Just before Eric went to prison, I was allowed to talk to him on the phone. And I said to him, Eric, do you have any regrets about this? And he said, oh, yes. He said, I regret that I didn't shoot myself instead of my parents.
The brothers are classified as maximum security inmates and are sent to different prisons.
Eric and Lyle had never had problems getting girls before, and being in jail wasn't enough to keep them away from the ladies.
I like to visit them in prison.
You're kidding.
No.
They got hundreds and hundreds of letters from women who were interested in starting up relationships. They even both got married while they were in prison.
On July 2nd, 1996, Lyle Menendez marries prison pen pal and former model Anna Erickson.
Lyle was married shortly after the first trial, and that marriage didn't last too long. He's now married again.
Eric marries in June of 1999.
Ultimately, all of the assets went to the lawyers. So, if they wanted their freedom and they wanted money, they didn't get either.
How does this happen in a section of society that we all envy? We would all like to be the Menendez family, living in a fine home and, having all the money in the world to do what we wanted. This cuts into the underside of that life. And so everybody was interested, and it was socially significant.
I feel like I did the right thing, and who knows whose life was saved. They were both old enough that they could have left home, but they chose not to. They chose murder.